welcome back to Chicken for Breakfast, the podcast where we talk about the basic fundamentals of life in perspective to, well, me. I'm your host, Magic, and this is the second episode of the week because we fell a little bit behind. If you haven't heard that story, go back and check the last podcast if you haven't already. We did miss a couple of weeks here, and I apologize for that, but we are back on the grind. We are back. We are ready to give you another quality episode of Chicken for Breakfast. Now, I want to know how this week was for you. I want to know, just tell me something about yourself. You know, I'd like to get a little bit of knowledge on my audience. I'd like to get a little bit of how you guys are, how you guys feel. I'm also thinking about in the future expanding this podcast a little bit more. We have video podcasting on YouTube, and we have audio podcasting on Anchor, and I don't know how we're going to handle it yet, but I do want to completely switch over to a platform where I can just give you both at once, audio and video, and I mean, yeah, that's what we can do. If you're on YouTube, let me know if you like YouTube, if you like watching the podcast more than just listening. Some people like just listening. I know I like listening to podcasting while I, wash dishes, while I do something. I like listening. When I'm in the car driving is probably the biggest one. I love listening to music and podcasts and everything, so I understand. But some people do like videos. I know the background that we have right here, I'm doing it in my house. I understand it's probably not the best, but there are llamas. If you like llamas, that is a llama puzzle we put together, completely irrelevant to the podcast, but I know the background is not great right now. I know this is kind of a low-key podcast, but I'm doing a podcast because I need internship hours. I want to do a podcast. I feel like sometimes I need to work through things. Much like the last episode that I did, sometimes I use this podcast to work through things in my life and to help other people at the same time. But ultimately, I want to entertain. I want to be in this business, and to do that, I got to practice. So this podcast is a practice podcast, and we would like to maybe keep it going even after we graduate OMS. We do have 2 months left. We are just now entering month 7 out of 8, so I'm very excited about that. So we have 2 months left. School is going great, and I have determined that I want to be in videography. Huge announcement. I want to be a videographer. I love videography. It is so fun. It is so amazing. And if someone watching this happens to see this and know of a freelance position where you need something done, or you need a full-time videographer for something, or even a part-time, hit me up. I got you. No, I don't want to use this to market myself, but I do want to be a videographer, so I love making video podcasting, but I record both at the same time. So what you hear on Anchor, you probably see on YouTube, and what you see on YouTube, you hear on Anchor. It's all the same. It's all one, obviously. So thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you, whether this is your first episode, whether you've listened to every other episode, whether you are my number one listener. Every single person is important. Thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you again for listening to me ramble on for 4 minutes and 5 seconds. So, jumping into the podcast, a scout is obedient. Now, this is a very confusing one. This is one that I have to stop and I have to take a little bit of a look at, because kind of sounds like a scout is a robot who just does what he's told. A scout is someone who does what they're supposed to do without question. And that's not obedience necessarily. It kind of is to an extent, but it's not. It's not, it's not being a robot who does every single thing you're programmed to do with no questions. No. I think that we have a lot of things that we have to be obedient to. Obedient meaning so many different things. Obedient is more like a doing the duty. That's really funny. Doing our duties to whatever obligations we have. Being obedient to the authorities that we are required to be obedient to. I think I've talked about respecting authority before as well, but being obedient to ourselves, being obedient to everything, just being someone who's willing to do what they're told. And I think being able to do what you're asked, do what you're told to do, whether it be at a job, whether you're at school, whether it's your parents, whether it's anyone with any sort of authority, with any sort of commitment to you, I think that obedience is important. And I've always been one to follow the rules. When I was a manager at McDonald's, I was always like, let's follow the rules. Even before I was a manager, follow the rules. I've always been a following the rules kind of guy, always been a don't do illegal things kind of guy. I'm just that good. I like doing things right. I like not getting in trouble for doing things that are probably not even worth it at the end of the day. And I feel like being obedient is a huge factor of that. So let's hop right into it. So think about anytime your mom asks you to do something and you really don't want to do it. Why? Because we like to fly in the face of authority as human beings. We like to be rebels. It's in our nature to not like doing things, whether it be we're lazy, whether it be we just don't have time, whether it be the person telling us to do it. There's always a reason that we feel like, I don't need to be obedient. I don't need to do that. That's not important. But obedience is very important, because if everyone could make their own decisions, if everyone decided what to do, nothing would ever get done. So, who do we need to be obedient to? Well, that depends on your beliefs. That depends on your priorities. That depends on you, what you need to be obedient to. Now, everyone should be obedient to the laws. Everyone should be obedient to their parents. Everyone should be obedient to their teachers and the people who are specifically hired, specifically designed to help you by encouraging you to do things for yourself and giving you a guideline, basically. Everyone should follow those guidelines, and everyone should obey who they should obey. And we all know that's we all know who those people are. But there are responsibilities, there are duties, there are other things that we need to be obedient to. And those depend on us. For example, for me being a scout, I'm going to just list off some things that I need to be obedient to. My responsibilities in work, my responsibility in scouting. It used to be a responsibility. I needed to be obedient to my leaders, my teammates, my senior patrol leader, everyone who was above me, everyone who was designed for me to be obedient to. School, teachers, I need to be obedient to my parents. Parents are very important. I love my parents very much. And there are times I need to be obedient in my relationship. That's important. I need to be obedient to my God. That's very important, and that's a whole nother subject as well. But I'll throw it in there. So those are mine. Those are I need to be obedient to these things because they're responsibility, because they're priority, not because I'm just supposed to. I don't need to be obedient to I don't even have an example. I don't need to be obedient to like a psychiatrist that I go to, because I don't go to a psychiatrist. I don't need to be obedient to let me explain this. I don't need to be obedient to laws in Canada because I don't live there. I need to be obedient to laws in America because I live here. So that's where I'm coming from. Obedience is important. Obedience does help. It helps us grow as people. It gives us guidelines. And honestly, 9 times out of 10 people only tell you to do things to help you, to teach you, to help you learn. I was an SPL. That meant I ran the troop other than the leaders. So essentially, if I would ask someone to do it, it was not because, oh, I was too lazy to do it, but it was everyone else has contributed, so you need to now, or I think that you'd be really good at doing this, or whatever it was. There was always a good reason for me to give them an obedience. Now, with obedience, listen up, this is very important. If you are in a position to give orders, to ask people to do things, if you are one who that people need to be obedient to, I hate it because the biggest reason that parents say to do something is because I said so. Now, I understand parents do not need to explain to their children why. I get that. I've always been taught that. You get asked to do something by your parents, you should do it. I get that. But I'm just saying that it doesn't help a child learn. It doesn't help a child do anything when all you say is because I said so. That just seems like you're dictating them at that point. But children, teenagers, people who have parents who still tell them what to do, they do that for a reason. And whether it is just because they say so or not, tough. They say so. They have that right. They brought you into the world. They have the right to tell you what to do. I mean, they're only here to help you, though, most times, unless you have very mean or strict parents. But even strict isn't mean. Even strict is, they're always looking out for you. So, I'm not a parent. I can't really give parenting advice, but I can be in the position of having to be obedient, and every time I've been obedient, it's worked out. I've learned something, I've been taught something, and I think being obedient to people that we need to be obedient to helps build character. It helps us know who we are, and ultimately it gets us in the mindset of following good habits, because I've always been more self-disciplined anyways because of being obedient and following rules and everything. I feel like I'm very self-disciplined. I feel like I can be obedient to myself at this point, which is the final thing we need to talk about really quick. Your priority should always be you. And I say this all the time, every single time. You should always be thinking about you. You need to be selfish with your happiness. You need to be comfortable with what you need to do, and you need to be obedient with yourself. Don't second guess yourself. Don't let other people make your decisions for you. Treat yourself like your boss. You need to make decisions for yourself. You need to learn how to be decisive. You need to learn how to help others. You need to learn how to be everything that you can be. Be the best person that you can be. And that only starts with you having self-discipline, being obedient to yourself. So, New Year's resolutions, if you start a New Year's resolution, you need to be obedient to yourself to do that. If you have a habit that you want to break, you need to be obedient and do that. No one else can do that for you. Because the biggest thing about self-obedience is motivation. If you don't have a motivation, you're not going to do it. This podcast, I'm not just doing it because I have to. I'm not doing it because of no reason. I'm doing it because I love it. I'm doing it because I want to. I'm doing it to entertain you. And the past couple of weeks have really been tough, I know, but to me it's like I need to be obedient to myself with this podcast. I need to stay consistent, and I've done pretty well at staying consistent and releasing an episode every week until recently, so we're trying to get back into that, but you see my point. Obedience is not necessarily just being told to do something and being a robot and just doing it because you were told to. Obedience is doing what's right at all times, essentially. It's building character, it's self-discipline, it's everything that's important, and respecting authority. I mean, some rules are not fun. Some rules are stupid. Some rules don't even need to be rules. But they are. And I'm always going to be a rule follower. I'm always going to be, I was a manager in SPL. I've been in leadership positions. I'm always going to be the one who encourages people to follow the rules. Not by yelling, not by, forcing. I mean, there does need to be assertiveness in that, but that kind of ties back to the last episode we made. Being kind and courteous. That can all go right into obedience too. Just because you can order people around and ask people to do things, and just because you're taking orders doesn't mean they have to be mean to you. Have self-respect too. Self-obedience and self-respect. That's all I got for this episode. I hope I didn't say the same thing 800 times. I probably did, but I think it's very important to understand that what I said. Thank you for tuning in. I'm sorry for all the technical difficulties with this episode. If you haven't seen the last episode or any more episodes before this, please go check it out. Shoot me an idea. Get a hold of me if you need anything. If you'd like to be on Chicken for Breakfast podcast and talk about something that is totally great, we should definitely do that. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Chicken for Breakfast, the podcast where we talk about the basic fundamentals of life from the perspective of a 19-year-old kid constantly waking up to an evolving world. And most recently, an evolving world that will not stop snowing. I mean, it is awful. We are on YouTube, we're on Anchor, Chicken for Breakfast podcast on Instagram, Facebook page. We have a pod page. We're on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Castbox, Beaker. We're on all sorts of platforms. Go check us out. Take a listen. Get a hold of us if you need anything. Let us know what we can do better. Just thank you for listening. I appreciate you. You guys are amazing. You guys are awesome. And we're not supposed to say you guys on the radio, but I know that I have a few listeners. So thank you for tuning in each week. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for being patient with me. And I hope your week goes great. I hope I will see you again next week. I really enjoyed Chicken for Breakfast, and at the end of the day, at the end of the podcast, at the end of the week, at the end of all of this, I hope you will too. Bye-bye.